I, Douglas Ducote, an American patriot by the grace of God, do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America from enemies foreign and especially domestic. Say it with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, Patriots, and welcome to another edition of the Douglas Ducote Show. You had many places you could be tonight, but you chose to be here with me, and for that, I am forever grateful. I am freshly back from a well-needed vacation with my wife. We went down to the beautiful Pensacola Beach, Florida, and hung out there for a week. Sand, sun, relaxation, and got to meet up with a old buddy, war buddy of mine, guy I served with in Desert Storm that I haven't seen in, well, about 31 years. Happened to be down there at the same time I was, so we had dinner while we were down there together. So that was great catching up with him. And also we got to go watch the Blue Angels practice over at Naval Air Station, Pensacola. So I uploaded that video right here on the channel. So if you get a chance later tonight or whenever you feel like it, go watch the video. It's pretty cool stuff. Okay, so let's get right into it. Yesterday's news cycle, as you all know, was dominated by Tucker Carlson's abrupt parting ways with Fox News. But Tucker wasn't the only media man to get the axe that day. Don Lemon also got a surprise firing from his anchor role at CNN. Been a long time coming. I've done many videos about Don Lemon. Also, because these things come in threes, NBC Universal also fired its former CEO, Jeff Shell, over allegations of sexual harassment. In a Twitter yesterday, Lemon said he was stunned at the news, which he says he received via his agent. He went on to say, after 17 years at CNN, I would have thought that someone in management would have had the decency to tell me directly. At no time was I ever given any indication that I would not be able to continue to do the show I loved and the network I loved, he wrote. Of course, CNN then came out and denied Lemon's description of events, writing in its own Twitter statement. Don Lemon's statement about this morning's events is inaccurate. He was offered an opportunity to meet with management, but instead released a statement on Twitter. But even if Lemon's version is accurate, and he was not told by his employers what was coming, was he really that surprised? If so, then he clearly hadn't been paying attention to his own life and career. The only surprising part of Lemon's firing is that it didn't come sooner. Don Lemon drew public outrage a few weeks ago when he made a grossly horrible comment about Nikki Haley, claiming the 51-year-old 2024 Republican presidential candidate isn't in her prime. Now, I don't know how he would know if she's in her prime or not, other than the fact that he's gay and he maybe he thinks he knows more about women than everybody else does. He said, yes, there aren't a few hundred less sexist and more ways to criticize her in public. Lemon was temporarily removed from his post and issued an apology for being such a weird creep. And that was actually his wording. But that was far from the first or only incident from which Lemon's issues, either on or reportedly off air. Earlier this month, Variety released an expo alleging 2 decades of troubled treatment of women and unprofessional antics. The outlet spoke with dozens of Lemon's former colleagues over the years who painted a picture of a journalist who floated rules and cozied up to power, all while displaying open hostility to many women and coworkers. They described him sending disturbing and threatening texts to his former co-anchors, as well as insulting a female producer, appearance to her face, and apparently being known for mocking and mimicking many other women while on air. And we've all seen it. We've watched him. It's just pathetic what this guy has done through the years. Each and every time he appeared to charm his way out of facing any meaningful consequences, Variety wrote. So maybe he generally was surprised he couldn't get out of whatever this final straw was. Actually, according to the New York Times, that straw might have not had anything to do with Lemon's long history of reported in public horrible things he has said about women or members of the Republican Party. The outlet says that a recent interview with another 2024 Republican hopeful by the name of Vikvi Ramsway left several CNN leaders shocked, according to their source. During the interview, which I talked about actually here on this show a few days back, or a few weeks back, Lemon went after her for making the absurd claim, among other things, the NRA played a large role in aiding Black Americans to gain freedoms following the Civil War. During the argument, and you can see it right here on YouTube if you want to, it's, you couldn't make this shit up if you tried. It's right there for everybody to watch. Lemon frustratedly pulled out his earpiece to silence the producers that were trying to talk to him to tell him, tone it the fuck down. And he didn't do it. He continued on. This interview was the reason why Lemon was fired, or even just the main or last reason. That's incredibly disappointing. To let him go for decades of insulting women and Republicans and those who call themselves MAGA, Make America Great Again, reportedly making them feel uncomfortable and unsafe, or for allegedly exploiting massive power imbalances in his romance and sexual relationship with extremely young male staffers, as Variety writes, but for calling out what he perceived as racist Republican nonsense. All along, the biggest racist bigot, besides the Reverend Al Sharpton, is Mr. Don Lemon. And I'm not happy to say that he's from my state. Matter of fact, his family lives very close to mine. Now, let's move on to Tucker Carlson. The announcement yesterday that Tucker Carlson had abruptly departed Fox News has been met with speculations and curiosity regarding what exactly caused the split, the right-wing media personality, and the conservative network. Fox News only publicly commented so far has been the network and Carlson had agreed to part ways. We thanked him for his service to the network as a host and prior to that as a contributor. In a statement, Fox News added that Carlson's last program was last Friday. Beginning Monday evening, yesterday, the network aired Fox News Tonight as an interim show helmed by rotating Fox News personalities until a new host is determined. Carlson himself has not released any statement regarding the news. And I also reached out and looked at it on Twitter, and he hasn't said anything there either. Though from the outside, it seems to be something of a surprise, considering Carlson ended what would have been his final episode last Friday. Had he known it, he wouldn't have ended it by signing off and saying, see you back on Monday. But there have been signs of tension between Carlson and the network in recent months due to large part of a $1.6 billion lawsuit brought against Fox News by voting equipment company Dominion Voting Systems, which was the subject of possible widespread election fraud and over wrongdoings in the wake of the November 2020 presidential election. The voting company recently settled with the network out of court, but not before text messages and emails by Carlson and other network personalities were made public as part of the court's filings. In addition to privately complaining about Donald Trump, even as he publicly courted his supporters, Carlson's text message showed that he lambasted Fox's management after the network accurately called or at least in their opinion, accurately called the 2020 election in favor for Joe Biden. So he went after his supervisors. Do the executives understand how much trust and credibility we've lost with our audience? We're playing with fire for real, Carlson wrote in one message to fellow employees in the days following the election. In another text exchange with fellow news Fox personalities Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham, Carlson called the network's news department pathetic. And, oh, by the way, it is. Writing that it had destroyed a brand that took 25 years to build, and the damage is horrible. Yes, he's right about that. The message stems from one of the network's correspondents tweeting that there was no widespread evidence of voter fraud, something that would later be backed up by dozens of courts across the country that refused to hear the whole case. While many of Carlson's messages were made public, hundreds of pages of documents from Dominion lawsuit were not raising questions about what else the now former Fox News host may have said about his colleagues and managers. That Carlson, former top producer Justin Wells, has also left the network, according to multiple outlets, including ABC News, as to the theory that the exit could have stemmed from private conversations that came to light as part of the recent lawsuit. The network ultimately settled its lawsuit with Dominion for $7.5 million, not $1.6 billion that they were asking for. Also, a lawsuit filed by former Fox News producer Abby Grossberg, who alleged that she experienced harassment and discrimination and was on the receiving end of anti-Semitic comments while working for the network. Rosenberg, who previously worked as a booker on Tucker Carlson Tonight, further argues in her complaint that she was isolated, overworked, undervalued, denied opportunities for promotion, and generally treated significantly worse than her male counterparts, even when those men were less qualified than her. Fox has denied the claims, saying in a statement it would continuously to vigorously defend Fox against her claims, which are riddled with false allegations against the network and our employees. So, until Tucker Carlson comes out and tells us directly himself what happened, we're not going to know. But it was a little different than what happened with Don Lemon, and it's kind of shocking that it happened at the same time, same day, for crying out loud. You all know who comedian Lewis Black is? He's kind of far left leaning, although he doesn't hold punches when it comes to Democrats fucking up, or Republicans for that matter, which is one of the things that I kind of like about listening to his rants and his comedian shows. Well, comedian Lewis Black once said, "The Democrat Party is a party of no ideas, and the Republican Party is a party of bad ideas. And the way this works is Republicans in Congress say, I have a really shitty, bad idea. And the Democrats in Congress say, we have a plan that can make it shittier. And isn't that exactly how that works up in Washington, D.C.? Well, I'll be damned if that's not exactly what's going on right now with our budget. Now, this should upset everybody, Democrats and Republicans. It's definitely got the veterans community going, what the fuck? We served, fought, bled, and many were personally injured and maimed for life. Our government that said we will take care of you forever, breaking that promise, could very well be short term coming down the road to us, the vets of this country. The Department of Veterans Affairs is warning that a Republican proposal to cap government spending could slash medical services for veterans and slow benefit payments. The statement outlining potential consequences of funding cuts was released by the department last Friday as the message battle heats up ahead of the expected vote in the House this week on a Republican plan to raise the amount of money the nation can borrow to pay its bills. But in exchange, what the Republicans are saying, if we raise this cap, then we want steep spending cuts, and the Democrats do not want any cuts. In fact, they just want to keep adding to the out of control trillions. Basically, you and I had to live on a budget, as we know, unless you won the lottery and you have billions of dollars. But Congress, who should live on a budget, doesn't. They don't have the same principles as the rest of us. They're not setting a very good example. Never have, and probably never will. Now, the Republican proposal lets me say out front right away, regardless of what the VA just told you, or what I just told you the VA said, you can go see the statement themselves on their own damn website, does not specifically cut VA funding, but it would place a cap on the overall amount of money the government can spend, leaving it to the Appropriations Committee to determine later which departments would get cuts and which wouldn't. So here's the fine line with that. When Democrats need to cut spending, where do they go to? Well, if you're around my age, and I just turned 61 last week, I can tell you where they go to. They go to the military budget and they cut it. And then they go to veterans and they cut it. They will not cut the entitlements that we give to illegal aliens. They will not cut the entitlements we give to lazy fuckers that don't want to work, that just want to suck off the tit of the government. Nope. They will go after hardworking Americans and people that have served this country. And of course, now we see Democrats going after the budgets, federal funding, as well as local state funding going to law enforcement. The VA list of problems caused by the cap is based on an estimate of a 22% cut if this was to happen, using the assumption that Pentagon funding stays flat while overall government funding levels for 2024 would be capped at 2022 levels, which is what the Republicans would like to see happen. White House Republicans vowing that Pentagon spending would be safe from cuts. The Biden administration has been warning of sharp reductions elsewhere in the budget, including spending for veteran services. While President's budget details a plan to honor our country's sacred obligation to care for American veterans, the families, caregivers, and survivors, the proposal to cut a broad range of critical programs by 22% would threaten critical services for veterans both at the VA and across the federal government, the VA said in its statement. The statement amplifies warnings the administration has previously issued, including a letter VA Secretary sent to House Appropriates Committee Democrats last month. Notice they didn't give them to Republicans. The VA projected the cut would translate into the agency not being able to handle 30 million fewer outpatient visits, with planned an estimate of 81,000 jobs cut across the Veterans Health Administration. It would also mean cutting 6,000 staff members from the Veterans Benefits Administration, which in turn would increase the disability claims backlog by an estimate of 134,000 claims. Other fallout would include hindering access to telehealth by cutting funding for IT infrastructure, slashing up to $565 million for major construction projects to update aging VA hospitals, and laying off about 500 staffers in the VA national cemeteries. So, what the VA did, let me just explain this to you real quick, is in their own ultimate wisdom said, if the Republicans want to cap how much can be spent by saying that Democrats have to cut stuff, that it's the Republicans' fault because the Democrats are going to cut veteran spending, but yet we're going to blame it on the Republicans for wanting the cap. This is batshit crazy. And then they go a step further to throw the shock value out there by determining that it did happen. Let's look into the future and say that this does happen. Where are we going to make the cuts? And then they come up with this stupid ass fucking plan that is read to you where it's going to come from. The guy in charge of the VA, well, it's not just him. It's the entire Biden administration, are a bunch of incompetent fucking idiots. That's right, I said it. Every damn one of them. Haven't seen a single member of this administration that I would shake hands with, much less spend any time with. They are a bunch of useless, complete, incompetent fools. And that's pretty damn scary. The VA argued that broader spending cuts would also affect veterans who rely on government assistance, such as housing vouchers for those at risk of homelessness, food stamps for those suffering from food insecurities, and health and human services mental health programs used by veterans not enrolled in the VA care. Republicans are dismissing the VA warnings, accusing the Biden administration and Democrats of fear-mongering ahead of the expected House vote, which should take place sometime this week, the debt limit bill. For months, Democrats have spread false claims that Republicans would cut veterans' benefits to get our physical house in order. House Veterans Affairs Committee Chairman Mike Bost, Republican Illinois, said in a statement last Friday. With the introduction of the Limit, Save, Grow Act, the message could not be clearer. The common sense bill will grow the economy and save American taxpayers money, all while protecting veterans' benefits, Social Security, and Medicare. The House Republicans' plan, which is not likely to become law as it faces fierce oppositions by Senate Democrats, nor would Biden sign off on it, is Republicans' opening offer to prevent a U.S. default on its debts in the next few months. Under the bill, the debt ceiling, which is the amount of money the Treasury Department can borrow, is ordered to pay for spending Congress has already approved through the annual appropriations process, would be raised by $1.5 trillion, or to March 31st, 2024, whichever comes first. In exchange for lifting the debt ceiling, the bill would cap overall 2024 spending to the 2022 levels, about $130 billion cut and limiting growth in spending to 1% annually over the next decade. The bill also includes a number of measures Republicans say will cut costs, including expanding work requirements for food stamp and Medicaid. Great idea. Don't sit on your ass and suck off the government tit. Go get a fucking job. We don't care if it's at fucking McDonald's asking if you want fries with that. Would you like a Happy Meal? Doesn't matter. Repealing the IRS funding Democrats approved last year, which will hire thousands of IRS agents to be police officers to go to your house and not just audit you, but fucking physically arrest you. Blocking the Biden administration's planned student loan forgiveness. It's going to save lots of money. Why should we have to pay for these entitled little fuckers when we paid for our college debts? We worked our ass off to pay for our debts. Why are we letting this generation get away scot-free and saying, oh, we will forgive your debts? No, that's not how it's supposed to fucking work. If you take out a loan, you pay your loan. That's how it works. That's how it's worked for millions of Americans prior to this administration. And now all of a sudden, these little whiny fucking crybaby liberal pricks out there want more handouts from the government. Please take away my student loan. No. Don't take away their student loan. In this case, if this was approved, that little shit would be taken from them, as it should be. And clawing back unused funding meant to address the COVID-19 pandemic. There's millions of money there that Democrats are throwing at all kinds of other shit. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has estimated the bill could save $4.5 trillion over the next decade. It's unclear whether the bill can pass the House, as several Republicans have voiced objection to it over reasons including opposition to raising the debt ceiling under any circumstances, and wanting even more stringent work requirements for government assistance programs than are already in the bill. Now, let me explain something to you. And I believe I'm speaking for most conservatives and Republicans out there, not all, but most. We don't have a problem with government assistance for those that really need it. If you get injured at work and you go on workman's comp, guess what? That's part of a government system. We're okay with that. If you have 4 or 5 kids and all of a sudden your husband walks out and leaves you stranded and you've never had a job before, we're okay with you getting food stamps or getting assistance for housing. That's a government program. We don't have a problem with Medicare and Medicaid, government programs. We have a problem with the hundreds of thousands of Americans that we know, factually know, are just sitting back, sucking off the government's tit that can go out and get a fucking job, but they won't do it because the Democrats keep giving more and more and more handouts. And that is part of the problem we face here in our country. When every Democrat expected to vote against the bill, Republicans can lose no more than 4 Republican votes and still pass it. Meanwhile, the White House continues to maintain that it will not negotiate in any way, shape, or form with Republicans over the debt ceiling, and that any discussion of spending cuts should be separate. That's right. Just keep spending money. Giving away entitlements to people that don't deserve it. Giving away billions of dollars to fucking Ukraine. Giving away billions of dollars to China. You see where I'm going with this? The open fucking borders. The billions of dollars were given to illegal aliens, or millions of dollars. I'm sure it's not up to billions, but it could be. I don't have the exact figures in front of me. Let me just say how happy America's 18 million plus veterans and the Republicans, Democrats, that you're fucking around with our benefits. All because of your wasteful spending and your inability to get a loan. And Joe Biden, the president of the United States of America, has outright refused to meet with the Speaker of the House to discuss this. Outright refused. So when all of a sudden we can't pay our bills and the economy comes to a screeching halt, maybe we'll start negotiating then. Of course, Democrats are going to blame it on Republicans. Republicans are going to blame it on Democrats. I'm just telling you how it is. It's the fucking facts. All right. That's what you got from me. It hurts. All right. For both sides. But I agree with Lewis Black. One party says, I got a shitty idea. And the other one comes up and says, I can make it shittier. That's what we're dealing with in Washington, D.C. A retired United States Navy SEAL is sounding the alarm about a declining number of young men and women willing to serve in the United States military. I've talked about this same thing right here on my show. In fact, once a week, I make a point of going and talking to National Guard recruiters, reserve recruiters, and active duty recruiters just to fill them out, see how things are going. And it's freaking bad. His name is Mike Serval. I hope I got that right. Now an author and entrepreneur, said weak leadership, I agree, and cultural rot, double agree, is playing a role in declining recruitment and retention. You nailed it on the head, sir. I would also add young men and women are watching how horrible veterans are being treated, and that would mean that them too one day. A November 2022 survey from the Ronald Reagan Institute found trust and confidence in the U.S. military stands at 48%, down from 70% in November of 2018. The primary reason for more than 20% decline was the perceived politicalizing of the military, according to a press release from the Ronald Reagan Institute. A second survey also found only 13% of 18 to 29-year-olds are highly willing to join the military, 25% are somewhat willing, and 26% are not willing at all. He goes on to argue one reason so few Americans are unable to serve is because of health reasons. I think it should send shockwaves through America that we've lowered our standards in recruiting to such depths. We're in a culture where everyone gets a trophy. Obesity is the new beautiful, he explained on Fox News Live. And if you fail or don't even try, don't worry, it's somebody else's fault. When you look at leadership, strong leadership, leadership that people respect and trust, they're willing to contribute and sacrifice for the collective good. When you have weak leadership, it's never going to happen. Now, the position to that is weak leadership. The crisis, confidence, where people pull inwards to protect themselves and their immediate families. And they're not willing to sacrifice for the cause they deem unworthy, he continued. But I'm not going to put this on the younger generation. If we can actually get them into the military, we can actually get them to a physical standard that they need to be. This generation is the next best thing we have. That's it. We just have to hold them to the standards of the old, or they will lose in combat. The military officer added that the U.S. needs to start training the younger generation to be the leaders the country needs for the future. I think a good sort of contrast here is there was a commercial by the Russians where they showed young men ready to do violence on behalf of their nation. And then the contrast to that of the U.S. Army that showed a video of a young soldier and her two mothers. We're sending some very dangerous narratives. We have to have pride in our nation, he said. He shared that joining the military was the greatest decision he had ever made because it helped him grow from a young boy into a man, and laid the foundation for his success. He went on to say that he grew up in California Bay Area, but it outlawed the JRTC program. And I've spoken about that here on the program as well. It's horrible what they've done in California school systems. They outlawed JROTC within high schools, within the immediate San Francisco Bay Area, he explained. So again, we've got to be very wary about the message we're sending to our youth, as well as our enemies abroad. And look, there's a lot of talk out there about, are we going to have another draft? Are we going to come back up with a draft? I don't think we have a choice. I really don't. From what I'm hearing, when I go talk to these recruiters once a week, and what is now coming out in the news, they can't get people in. And when you can't get people in, they start lowering standards to get them in. Physical fitness standards, testing standards when you take the ASVAB test. That's not going to help anything. When you bring people in that are dumb and overweight, out of shape, health issues, if you bring a guy in because he wants to have the military pay to transform him into a woman or vice versa, and that's what they're allowing now. Yes, the active duty military will allow a member of the military that's born one gender to say, I want a sex change and I want to become the other gender, and they will pay for it. Is a draft the answer? I can't say that it is. I can say this much. It will allow them to bring people in that are educated, that aren't having medical issues, that can meet the standards. It can weed out those that are coming in right now that we don't want in, but we don't have a choice. I mean, we currently have judges that are giving criminals options, either 3 years in prison or 3 years in the military. And they're bringing in known gang members. True story, my friends. It's fucking sad what we're now done to our military. No one else to blame but this administration and its wokeness. The Joint Chiefs of Staff, the most incompetent group of fucking people the military has ever seen. It will go down in history that way. Trust me. And I used to think that Jimmy Carter was the worst president ever when it came to anything to do with our military. Well, this son of a bitch up in the White House has made Jimmy Carter look like Ronald Reagan, for crying out loud. What the draft will do is it will jerk a knot in these entitled little fuckers and, yes, take boys and turn them into men, providing the military goes back to that type training. Even the training that I had when I went in the Army in 1985 is not the same training that my dad went into in the 1950s. And the training today is a walk in the park, and it shouldn't be that way. All we're doing is setting up for failure. We're setting them up for failure because they can't handle being yelled at in basic training. So they're going to die on the battlefield. We're setting up failure for this country for not being able to win wars because of the wokeness. So that's my 2 cents. Congresswoman Nancy Mace pushed back on CNN host Kathleen Collins and the notion that her remarks about allegations of corruption regarding the Biden family and Hunter Biden's business dealings were controversial, as she called for a thorough investigation. Mace, along with several others on the House Oversight Committee, visited the Treasury Department on April 17th, my birthday, last Monday, to review records related to the Biden family and their past business associates as part of their investigation into whether they pose a threat to national security. The CNN This Morning host told Mancy that that's quite an allegation to make and asked if she had evidence, which she responded, "Yes, I do. It's not a conspiracy theory." There were over 170 suspicious activity reports that we were able to look through. And I'm going to be very clear, she said. I did that video, which she did as she was walking out of the Treasury Department, And then the far left wanted to call me and label me a conspiracy theorist afterwards. It's not a conspiracy. These were things that I read about while I was there, and we're talking about potentially up to a dozen Biden family members now. And for years now, the left has said, no one is above the law. If that's the case, put your money where your mouth is. Have this thing fully investigated to the fullest extent of the law. If the people, the average American, saw what we saw, those 170 pages, they would question why there isn't an investigation going on heavily by the FBI. The allegations that I made are absolutely what we were reading about last week, she said. And I call balls and strikes on both sides. And I've been very clear and honest about what we saw when we went up there. I can't share all the details because lots of it is confidential information. But every time we overturn a stone, there's more to be investigated because you see another dumpster fire. And you're like, what is it going on? Why is this happening? Mace continued. Collins said that the suspicious activity reports don't mean that wrongdoing has been committed and that not all the information is verified. She asked Mace how she knows the information is verified to come out and make an allegation like that. I would just like to ask the Justice Department to follow the money. There are more questions and answers and more Biden family members involved than what we already knew. It's all above board, right? Then say it's above board. But when you look at what's going on and the sources of some of the fundings that's known and unknown and where it's going, you have lots of questions. And you're asking yourself, why hasn't this been investigated to the fullest extent of the law? It's very damning, the things that we read in those documents, Congressman Mace said. The accusations therein, the source of the funding, where the money is going, the shell companies, prostitution rings. It's insanity to me that it's not been investigated in a way that it should have been done. Congressman James Comer, after reviewing the documents, said the panel has identified 6 additional members of the Joe Biden's family who may have benefited from Biden's family businesses that were being investigated by him, bringing the total number involved to about 9. First, we thought it was just Hunter. Then we found out because of the laptop, it was Hunter and his daddy. And now we're finding out it was Hunter, it was Joe's brother and other family members. The Oversight Committee will continue to pursue additional bank records to follow the Biden's tangled web of financial transactions to determine if the Biden family has been targeted by foreign actors and if there is a national security threat, Comer said, vowing to soon provide the public with more information about what we've uncovered to date. The American people need transparency and accountability, and the Oversight Committee will deliver much-needed answers. So, Democrats pushing back because they only wanted accountability and transparency when Trump was in office. And now that a Democrat's in office, oh no, we can't have that. That's racist. Don't look there. The Biden family has been embedded with China and Ukraine for a long fucking time. And all of that is going to be proving to you in the very near future. Will anything be done about it? Probably not, no, but hell no. It would take Republicans winning back a good majority of the House, the Senate, and 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in order for a president to make sure his FBI and his Department of Justice actually do their fucking jobs and go investigate this criminal activity. Instead of what we see and happen right now, where they only look at Republicans and not Democrats. An Illinois judge ruled that the city of Chicago must rehire and pay back lost wages of unionized city employees who were fired or disciplined for violating the COVID-19 vaccination requirements. Administrative Law Judge Ann Hembergel, writing on behalf of the Illinois Labor Relations Board, said that the city failed and refused to bargain in good faith with union leaders over the decision or the effects of the decision to implement the mandate. The decision applies to Union City of Chicago employees working as carpenters, bricklayers, plumbers, electricians, machinists, and other job categories. In fact, just if you're in a union in Chicago or in Illinois, this is who it's looking at, okay? Here, not only are you going to get your job back, but hold on, there's more. Effective employees must be paid back lost wages and benefits with 7% annual interest, according to the ruling. In 2021, Mayor Lori Lightfoot announced all city employees must be fully vaccinated. She warned there would be consequences for any city employee who wasn't vaccinated by October of 2021. Employees who failed to report their status by October 15th will be placed on leave, no pay status, a press release stated at the time. Lightfoot's mandate was not well received by the union or any other workers for that matter in Illinois, some of whom loudly booed her while speaking at a union fundraiser later that month. We think it's a strong decision and favorable for workers' rights generally, said Andros Liddell, a spokesman for the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, told the Chicago Sun-Times. At issue is the case is whether an employee has an obligation to bargain over significant changes to terms and conditions of employment. Do I see them challenging this all the way up to the Supreme Court? Yeah. However, the mayor's office blasted the mandate repeal in a statement. The record before the administration law judge tells a completely different story. Yesterday's ruling was an erroneous decision that does not follow the law, facts, nor importantly, the science, because Lori Lightfoot and her group are the Wizard of Oz. We are currently reviewing the ruling and evaluating our next steps. A representative for the mayor's office stated to Fox News Digital. Lightfoot's current term will end May 15th. Thank God. Although the guy coming behind her, Democrat, is not much better. This is going to be the first time in 40 years the Chicago mayor did not win a re-election. Crime appeared to play a major role in voters' decisions to give Lori Lightfoot the boot, as the city saw some of the highest crime rates during her tenure. Speaking of, the epidemic of black-on-black crime in America is something I've addressed many, many times here on this show and in separate videos. Well, now, real-time host and liberal Bill Maher called out the lack of attention to high black-on-black crime rates in cities such as Chicago during his show last Friday. Hosting a panel with Brown University economist Glenn Laurel and international relations scholar Daniel Bessner, Maher questioned the rising crime in major cities and why it was not being addressed. Like Chicago, most of the shootings are young black men killing other young black men. And I myself have called this an epidemic because it is. Is that not correct? Maher asked. After Laurie confirmed it was true, Maher continued, okay, much more than what the cops do. Why doesn't anybody talk about that? Why aren't there 100 giant black celebrities who would have the respect of those people saying, what are you doing to yourself? Why are you killing each other? Great fucking question. One that I've asked many times. Although Chicago Mayor-elect Brandon Johnson has commended criminal activity or condemned criminal activity, such as the teen takeover of the streets that happened on April 15th. I'm sure you all heard about that. He criticized people for He criticized people for going after these teenagers and their violent behavior. Said it's well past due that we put an end to this dynamic. Look, going after what these kids did is wrong. We have to keep them safe as well. Johnson said in a speech on Thursday. Laurel simply criticized the failure of Democrat politicians such as Johnson to address and properly handle crime in their cities in order to get a majority of the voters in Chicago or any place else. You get behind anything that is going to cost them. They have to feel safe. We have to feel that the people in charge are on their side. And that's why Mayor-elect Brandon Johnson needs to come and give speeches saying this is not good behavior. We won't tolerate it in our city. The reason why we have cops is precisely in order to stop this from happening. And if you do it on my watch, you're going to go to jail. That's what he should say instead of coddling them. Mayor went on to criticize suggestions that more financial investment in the city would fix the issue. 1 in 3 children in America comprehension. 85% of black students lack proficiency in reading skills, he said. We already spent a lot of money on schools. So are we going to keep telling me that more money will fix this because I feel like this is much more connected to the problems of people who can't read? Yes, they're going to have problems with gainful employment. And it seems like, a lot of times the solutions that come from the left seem symbolic. You are correct, sir. They don't seem like we're addressing what really needs to be done, which is get kids back in school, get them off the street, get them into reading, get them to have jobs. It doesn't seem like the money is getting to this problem of 85% of black students lack proficiency in reading skills, he added. The Chicago Police Department reported that motor vehicle theft, aggravated battery, theft, and murder have all increased since 2022. The department is also working to appoint a new superintendent after interim superintendent Eric Carter steps down on May 15th. Now, what he's calling for is all these black athletes that make millions of dollars in the NFL and basketball and you name it, actors, actresses, black members of Congress, rap artists. Why aren't you going down there? Why aren't you going down there and speaking to these youth. Instead of saying Black Lives Matter, hands up, don't shoot, which is all fake, didn't happen. Instead of making up false narratives and accusing police of being racist bigots, why aren't you down there? Well, I can tell you why you're not down there. Because you yourself don't want to be involved, because you feel that they will attack you, because you don't give two shits about Black lives. All you care about is the millions of dollars going into your bank account, and fuck the rest of them. So here's part of the problem. 2 Chicago black teens have been charged with only a misdemeanor for stealing a car and crashing it into a pickup truck, resulting in the death of a baby and wounding 3 passengers. I'll repeat that. 2 Chicago black teens have been charged with only a misdemeanor charge for stealing a car and crashing into a pickup truck, resulting in the death of a baby and wounding the adult passengers in that vehicle. The boys, aged 14 and 17, were speeding down West Washington Road, where they blew out through an intersection and collided with a pickup truck carrying an adult woman and her 3 children. Christina Uvel, a 6-month-old, died of his injuries, while the other 3 passengers, 34, 17, and 7-year-old, were treated at Strongard Hospital. The accident was caught on surveillance video by local resident Sean Walker. The baby wasn't breathing, so we started doing CPR, Walker told Fox News 32. My main thing was so we could get the pulse back to the baby. In that moment, our lives were altered forever. Our sweet boy, Kristen's life was cut short at just 6 months, the family wrote in a GoFundMe page. He suffered from an impact that fractured his skull, causing his brain to swell and eventually killing him. Manslaughter, by the way, in Illinois carries a sentence of 2 to 5 years in prison, fines up to $25,000, and 4 years probation. And these little fuckers got a misdemeanor, a little slap on the wrist. Don't do that. And finally tonight, after the Biden administration used the United States military to evacuate U.S. government employees from the embassy in Sudan a few days ago, aimed at ongoing violence in the country that has left hundreds dead, White House National Security spokesman John Kirby said it's too dangerous to evacuate remaining Americans. Oh boy, we're going to do everything we can to help guide people, get them the information they need to get out safely, Kirby told CBS Morning News yesterday. Although, with no embassy, how do you plan to pull that rabbit out of your ass, John Kirby? He went on to say, but it's not safe right now for another evacuation attempt. That would actually put Americans in more danger, not less. Within that course of a week, we moved from just urging both sides to abide by a ceasefire, which of course we still do, to feeling like it wasn't safe enough for our diplomats and our embassy to stay manned there and operating, so we moved them out and said, fuck the rest of you. Kirby said thousands of Americans, most whom are dual nationals, lived and worked in Sudan. Many of these Americans, if you don't know this, work for American contractors doing business in Sudan for the American government. According to Kirby, many do not want to be evacuated. Seems he said that lie during the Afghanistan retreat and surrendered too. However, some Americans do want to leave. Also, yesterday, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, another incompetent asswipe, announced a ceasefire between the Sudan Army Forces, the SAF, and the Rapid Support Forces, which he said would last 72 hours starting at midnight. To support a durable end to the fighting, the United States will coordinate with regional and international partners and civilian stakeholders to assist in the creation of a committee to oversee the negotiations, conclusion, and implementation of the permanent ceasefire of hostilities and humanitarian arrangements in Sudan, Blinken said. Kirby's claims are eerily similar to those made by the Biden administration after the deadly withdrawal from Afghanistan in August of 2021, when as many as 9,000 American citizens were left stranded aimed at the Taliban takeover, according to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. The report contradicted the Biden administration earlier claim that just 100 to 150 Americans were left behind. It also highlighted the administration's characterization of Americans who were abandoned, particularly Blinken's problematic suggestion that some Americans are still unsure if they want to leave Afghanistan at the time. They couldn't get to the fucking airport because of the Taliban. Instead of reinforcing the administration's commitment to continue to evacuate Americans, Secretary Blinken praised between dual nationals and American citizens, claiming the remainder were just dual citizens living in Afghanistan for years, decades, generations, deciding whether or not they want to leave the place they know and have been calling home. And it's a wrenching decision. Dual citizens face the same security threats and deserve the same effort to depart Afghanistan as American citizens do. You dumb son of a bitch. The efforts to distinguish between dual citizenships and American citizens is a distinction without a difference and appears to have been a messaging tactic to minimize the number of American citizens left behind. So, Joe Biden, just how many Americans did we leave behind this time? Everything you touch turns to shit, it seems. When you were the vice president, you, Obama, and Hillary Clinton fucked over Americans in Benghazi. You did the same thing in Afghanistan, and now in Sudan. With a complete and total failure you and your administration have become, it's sickening to say the least. Folks, you have many places to be tonight. You chose to be here with me, and for that, I am forever grateful. Thank you very much. Haven't already done so, please subscribe to this channel. Ring the little bell so you get notifications. Hopefully you get notifications. Most of the time, they don't even send out notifications because they don't like me. Also, go check out DouglasDucote.com, our website, as well as in the description of this video and all my videos. You can see the other places on social media that you can follow me. Reach out to me on the other social media platforms, and I'll do the same thing for you. That's how we do this. We follow each other. We help spread the conservative values of this country and what our forefathers wanted us to do. As always, please say a prayer for our men and women serving in the United States military, our veterans, our law enforcement officers, our first responders and their families, our angel families, our blue and gold star families in our country. May God bless the United States of America. And if you don't know what angel families are or blue and gold star families, please Google that tonight. Learn about it. They need our support more now than ever before because the current administration is pissing, literally pissing on the graves of their loved ones. And that is unacceptable. Good night, everyone. I'll see you Thursday right here, 8 p.m. Central, for another episode of the Douglas Ducote Show to discuss all things that are happening in this country that make you go, what the fuck did I just hear? Take care and good night, everyone.